Thank you. Admiral Howard, Deputy Chief of Mission Azumi, ladies and gentlemen, konnichiwa and welcome to today's joint ceremony as we, as the men and women of the Japanese Self-Defense Force and the U.S. Armed Forces, remember the resiliency of the great nation of Japan as they were affected by the devastating Great Eastern Earthquake that occurred 5 years ago on March 11th, 2011. I would like you to, of course, stay standing, and we will hear the anthems of Japan and the United States. Please be seated. Before I introduce the guest speakers, I'd like to mention that many of the sailors that you see in the audience today, and many of you have served out in Japan, and you were part of Operation Tomodachi. That includes Senior Chief Ryan King, who was here as part of the Navy Ceremonial Guard, who you just saw escorting the official party. He was actually stationed on board the Mighty Mustin, supporting relief efforts. It's now my privilege to introduce our Minister Azumi, the Deputy Chief of Mission for the Embassy of Japan. Minister Azumi.
Thank you very much. Admiral Thomas, Lieutenant General Field, distinguished flag officers, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm honored to be here. Thank you, Admiral Thomas, for hosting this event. I also want to thank the United States Marine Band, which will perform with our Global Ground Self-Defense Force Central Band. One of the things we will hear a bit later is a song called Hana wa Saku, or Flower Will Bloom. This song has become meaningful to Japanese as a tribute to resilience and reconstruction after the earthquake and the tsunami. A number of you saw the results of this catastrophe first hand through Operation Tomodachi. When the tsunami hit the coast of the Tohoku area, the wave was 70 feet high at its peak. Imagine a wall of water almost 7 stories high, sweeping in and destroying everything in its path. People, houses, cars, trees, everything except the higher ground. Japan was stunned by the enormity of the damage. US personnel from the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps, the services you represent, came to our assistance at this time of great need. It's interesting, the images that a person remembers. Sailors on US Navy ships provided not only food, but also toys to children in shelters. I remember a picture of one boy, family hugging a koala bear. My guess is this koala bear was probably a gift that the sailor had originally gotten for someone back home after a stop in Australia. Yet here was this little boy who had suffered unimaginable destruction and losses at such a young age. Hugging that little koala, I think he will never forget that bear. The people of Japan will never forget what all of the service represented here did. I believe such generosity of spirit cemented something lasting and deeply powerful in our relationship. It will not be forgotten. What we are remembering today is a hope and relief that you brought, the friendship and heart that you showed, and the renewal that you helped enable. Ladies and gentlemen, on this 5th anniversary of Operation Tomodachi, on behalf of the people of Japan, I thank you for all that you did, for all that you continue to do, and I express to you my great gratitude for your friendship. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Major General Onozuka, who is the Director General of Defense Plans and Policy, Department of Japan Joint Staff. General.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Major General Onozuka, J5 Japan Joint Staff. As a representative of Self-Defense Force, I'd like to present a message from Admiral Kawano, Chief of Staff, on his behalf. I sincerely appreciate Admiral Thomas, Director of Navy Staff, for giving us the opportunity to have such a great event here at the Pentagon. Also, I'm very grateful to all of the attendees for participating in this event. 5 years have passed since the Great East Japan earthquake, which caused unprecedented damages to the northeastern part of Japan and claimed many precious lives. The efforts of local communities and institutions concerned have led to consistent progress in reconstruction and restoration. It goes without saying that the cooperation and support of many US military service members, including those of you attending here, established the foundation for reconstruction and restoration at that time. While serving as the Vice Chief of Staff, Joint Staff, I was constantly kept aware of the situation and Operation Tomodachi. People in Japan fondly remember the US support as a symbol of the band Kizuna in Japanese, which exists in the alliance between Japan and the US. The US Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, and the Army worked together, and at its peak, deployed about 16,000 officers and enlisted 15 ships and 140 aircraft to the disaster area in the HADR operation we all know as Operation Tomodachi. The Navy's USS Ronald Reagan was dispatched off the coast of the Miyagi Prefecture on the 13th of March, just 2 days after the disaster occurred, and initiated disaster relief and support activities in the conjunction with the JSDF. Last year, USS Ronald Reagan was forward deployed at Yokosuka, and we offer our heartfelt gratitude for her and her crew's return to protect Japan. The Marine Corps 31st MEU conducted support activities at the isolated island Oshima in Kesenma City, leveraging its amphibious capabilities. After the earthquake, HADR exercises have been held in many parts of Japan. When one of the exercises was held in northeastern Japan in 2014, the MV-22 Osprey, which had not yet been deployed in Okinawa at the time of the earthquake, flew to Oshima for the HADR exercise. Residents of Oshima Island welcomed the US Marines and the MV-22. Units of the US Air Force removed the rubble in Sendai Airport to restore operations as soon as possible. Also, they transported many servicemen and relief supplies by using airfields, including those at Yokota and Sendai. The fact that Sendai Airport restored its function in just a few days served as a ray of hope, not only for disaster victims, but also for us JSDF personnel. The US Army, meanwhile, conducted Operation Soul Train with the JGSDF to remove rubble that had flooded railway and train stations. After transferring some of the situation to higher ground, rail service finally reopened on the whole line last year in May, providing means of transportation to the local people. In spite of the chaos situation after this great earthquake, each of the US service components demonstrated its capabilities to its full extent in meeting the requirements in the disaster-stricken areas. It's not difficult to imagine that this was the result of strong leadership and copious knowledge, experience, and passion of commanders and their staff who are here today. Your leadership and foresight gave disaster victims and the entire Japanese people a ray of hope. The Japan-US alliance, which Prime Minister Abe touted as an alliance of hope in his address, the joint session of the Congress last year, will continue to deepen for the sake of peace and security in the region. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, please let me express my sincere gratitude for US forces' support in response to the Great East Japan earthquake and for this meaningful event. Finally, I would also like to thank the US Marine Band who will conduct today's joint musical operation with the Ground Self-Defense Force Central Band to perform beautiful and synchronized harmony following my remarks. Thank you very much.
General, thanks for queuing that up. We're now honored to have a joint musical performance from the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force Band and the President's own United States Marine Band. Our next speaker is Lieutenant General Mark Berlakis, United States Marine Corps, Deputy Commandant of Manpower and Reserve Affairs. General Berlakis was Commanding General of 3rd Marine Division during Operation Tomodachi.
Admiral Howard, Minister Izumi, good afternoon, and thanks for hosting this event. And as I learned early in my career, you thank the band early and often, so what a wonderful concert. Thank you very much. It's a special day for all of us who participated in Operation Tomodachi. I experienced the operation from the start, having been in Tokyo on March 11th. And for the next 31 days of the operation was my sole focus of effort. And from the experience, what I'd like to do very quickly are relay 3 impressions that I shared, that I learned and I experienced then, and that I'll share with you today. The first is that those of us who served as leaders in Tomodachi had the honor of serving with some of the best people our respective nations could offer. The commitment, the self-sacrifice, and determination of those Japanese and American servicemen and women was truly incredible. Their passion for the mission was palpable, and their willingness to do whatever was necessary, whatever it took to reduce the suffering of the affected population, served as a lesson to all of us from both nations, both then and now. Secondly, the commanders who led us in this mission were also very superb. Lieutenant General Burt Field, who probably had the toughest assignment of any of us in the operation, executed his mission with energy, compassion, and integrity. My boss, Ken Gluck, was terrific as the commander of JTF 505. Major General Craig Timberlake, here in the audience right now, was the commander of the forward forces in Sendai, on the ground, making things happen. And our senior leaders, Admirals Willard and Walsh and Ambassador Roos in Tokyo, were steady examples of excellence throughout this this crisis. General, on the other side, General Ariki, Major General Bonsho, a counterpart of mine, and our friends and counterparts in the Japanese Self-Defense Forces were examples to all of us. And I would like for all of us to reflect on the unique service and leadership of General Kimazuka, whose service to his nation was historic and whose recent passing is still mourned by many of us on the American side. I'd like to conclude with a last observation. In the numerous interviews I gave as a land component and after the operation, one question was repeatedly asked of me about how it felt to be part of the operation. And 5 years later, I can tell you that it was very, very special. Japan was my home, as it was the home of many of the American soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines that responded to the crisis. We had the opportunity to show our thanks for the hospitality, the comradeship, and the support of the Japanese people and the Japanese Self-Defense Force. And having the opportunity to work with them side by side in what was a tremendous national emergency, to show that we, as part of their population, as their friends, their brothers, and comrades always, it proved to us to be a very unique experience. And so I thank everybody who was there for Operation Tomodachi, for those that served, for those that have made the trip back here and have put this back together again. Because as I said when I started, it was a very special time. In over 30 or almost 35 years of service, it is one of the most memorable things that I've been involved in uniform. And I think I say that for most of those who have participated in the operation. So thank you. Good afternoon.
Yeah, as General Berlakis mentioned, that was our home. And nobody represents that better than the person I'm going to introduce right now, and Mark just mentioned him. And that's Lieutenant General Burt Field, U.S. Air Force retired. He was U.S. Forces Japan at the time and also 5th Air Force Commander during Operation Tomodachi.
Admiral Howard, my friends, good to see you again, Minister. Thank you all for being here today. I'd like to echo Mark. Mark, as always, is there first and better than I ever was from the first day of the operation. But the band, I'd like to just especially recognize you. I don't know how you guys are going to debrief today's performance, but from that seat, you're magnificent. So let's have a round of applause.
Yeah. Great.
So many of you served in Operation Tomodachi, and like me, and like Mark, and like the rest of the speakers, it does hold a special place in our hearts. And the reason of it is because that was our home. And as opposed to deploying somewhere and trying to provide assistance or engage in combat operations, it happened today, right now, this minute. What are you going to do to help? And the way it started made it more memorable than many of the operations that all of us have been involved in before. But the thing that really strikes me, and you'll hear from lots of different people about lots of different things, was how were the people on both sides, the American and the Japanese side, and how they reacted to this. And I'm going to tell you a couple stories about just a few people. So the first one was this young airman, Airman Veronica Cox. She's an E3. She's down in Kadena, working in the Special Operations Group down there. And at the start of this disaster, I called up all of our component commanders and I said, hey, I'm not sure whether we're allowed to do what I'm telling you to do, but I need you to get whatever you got. And I listed it all out, gave them some guidance, and I said, show up at Yokota Air Base and we're going to be helping the Japanese recover from this because we don't even know the magnitude of this disaster at this time. They all said yes. They all came up. Many of them I had no formal command relationship with. I talked to Scott Van Buskirk, 7th Fleet Commander. He was down in Singapore when this happened. By the time I was able to get in touch with him, he said, Bert, I'm already on the way. And he had set sail and he was returning back. And en route, he figured out how to get the Ronald Reagan, who had just done some exercises over in Korea, over to help out. So it was a team effort. It was a bunch of commanders doing the right thing, and it was people who really cared about where they lived, standing up to help. So Veronica Cox is sitting down at her desk on a Friday afternoon, and these guys are rushing out the door, and they stopped and they looked at her and they said, Airman Cox, you speak Japanese, don't you? And she said, yeah, I speak Japanese. My mother's Japanese. And they said, pack your bag, you're coming with us. And she said, coming with you where and for how long? And they said, yes, hurry. And so, didn't know how long, didn't know where she was going, didn't know what she was going to do, and neither did they, but they figured somebody speaking Japanese would be helpful. 2 days later, they strap a rope on Veronica Cox, shove her out of a helicopter, lower her down to a building where she says, hi, I'm Airman Cox, United States Air Force, and we're here to help. Second person I want to talk about, and this is a group of people. It's day 2 or 3 of the operation. We're listening to people trying to figure out what's going on. And in the back of my small brain, I remembered in Haiti, Google had provided some help to all of the people that were over there. So I look over at my Vice Commander of 5th Air Force, Jay Raymond, then Brigadier General, now Lieutenant General Jay Raymond, and I said, Jay, call Google. He looked at me and said, what? And I said, yeah, call Google. Just call them up and say who you are and say, hey, didn't you help out with Haiti? And see what they can do. Jay says, I can do that. He goes on the website, finds a phone number. Come to find out, there's a Google office in Tokyo. They say, come on over. He goes over, and the upshot of this partnership that we created that day is we find 2 airmen, a senior airman and a lieutenant that speak the language of Google, which is Python. We get them with the Google guys, and when we were trying to figure out the extent of the radiological damage that was going on both on land, in the air, and at sea, these were the core of a group of people that were able to program this into where we could get a pictorial look of how the radiation was spreading and the extent to which it was concentrated. The third person I want to talk about is another airman. It's a guy named Colonel Rob Toth. He was the head of this operations group, and he was in Maxwell Air Force Base when this earthquake happened, and he immediately left. And he showed up, finally got, which was hard at the time, to get back to Japan. He got back to Japan on Monday. Earthquake started Friday, on Monday. I had just come back from seeing the Minister of Defense stand up Japan's first Joint Task Force under the command of General Kimazuka, who was a magnificent commander. And we had tried to land at Sendai Airport, and we couldn't because it was underwater and, as far as I could tell, destroyed. And that night, when I got back, we're in the battle cab, and Rob Toth comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, General Field, I'm Rob Toth. I'm the head of the special operators down at Kadena. I've been talking to them. They think we can open up Sendai Airport in about 2 to 3 weeks." I looked at Rob and I said, "Rob, nice to meet you. No way." And I used 3 words instead of 2 words in the "no way" comment. So Rob Toth stood there and argued with the Lieutenant General that he had never met before until that Lieutenant General finally said yes to a good idea. And they went out there and gathered, with the support of a lot of other people, led an effort that opened Sendai Airport in about 2 weeks, and commercial air traffic was landing within a month, which is a remarkable achievement because Sendai Airport was smack in the middle of where this disaster area was. So it was a big, big achievement for the Japanese and a symbol of hope for all of the nation. So those are great examples of people at command levels, at lower levels, that were doing the right thing to help. But I always say this, all of that is fine. Our job at the end of the day was merely to support the Japanese in their efforts to recover from this disaster. And here's the 2 heroes that I always take with me. The Japanese Self-Defense Force, under the command of all of those leaders, spearheaded by General Oriki. They did unbelievable, tragic, hard work from hour 1, and they continued it. They exhibited feats of heroism that most people will never understand in regards to their reaction to the nuclear disaster. And I am forever will be impressed by the way that they responded to that tragedy. And the most important hero, in my mind, is the Japanese people. Unimaginable tragedy, unimaginable destruction, incredible. And they withstood that and started to rebuild with a grace and dignity that we could only hope to have. So it was an honor for me to be part of this, a very small part of this effort, to assist you in the recovery of your country and to work with these great Americans and the great men and women of the Japanese Self-Defense Force and be just a small part of that recovery effort. Thank you.
General Field, I know I speak for everybody. Thank you for leading us in that time. Our next speaker is Vice Admiral Forrest Faison, the Navy Surgeon General and Chief of the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery. Admiral Faison was coordinator of Navy's medical support during Operation Tomodachi. Forrest.
Thank you. Thank you. Admiral Howard, Minister, konnichiwa, watashi wa Faison-san. Thank you. Thank you very much. I would characterize the medical response as caring for family, because we were. Many of us have done tours in Japan. Myself, I've been privileged to do 2 tours in Japan and have many friends and close friends still there. And caring for them was caring for family. Our family had 3 trees that we cared for as part of the medical response. The first was the people of Japan. On our bases, in our facilities, and especially in our hospitals, are many, many Japanese citizens, many of whom have spent their entire professional careers alongside us caring for each other. And we were caring for them. Many of them had families in the greater Fukushima area, and they didn't know what had happened to their loved ones. And so we reached out to help them get in touch with their loved ones, get them down, and provide care for them. In some cases, staying in the hospitals or staying with us in our homes if they had no place to stay. Providing food, toys, other support services, and most importantly, answering their questions. Many had questions about what would happen. And so we brought our radiation health experts, our preventive health medicine experts over to Japan. All that we had in the west coast of the Navy, we brought them to Japan immediately to provide questions and answers and to address their concerns and needs in caring for our Japanese family. The second group of our family was the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force. We have partnerships with especially with the Yokosuka Self-Defense Hospital that go back decades. Conferences, staff exchanges, and a program where we train Japanese interns out of medical school that's over 65 years old. And all of them are family to us. And we provided them radiation health expertise. We assisted with preventive medicine surveillance. We assisted with monitoring and checking food supplies and water supplies to reassure folks and ensure that things were safe. And as the radiation, we got better visibility on the radiation cloud and what was going on, we provided expertise to help them make plans and prepare to take care of their folks. And the third group in our family was our own folks. Our families there, many of whom were young, many of whom had young children, many of whom had deployed spouses or families elsewhere, and they all had questions. And so we opened up our hospitals and brought them in 24/7 to answer their questions, address their concerns, address their needs. And we opened up hotlines and websites for the families back home in Texas and Connecticut and elsewhere who were hearing about this on the news and also had questions. And they could call us anytime, and we would talk to them and address their concerns. So 3 branches of our family, our Japanese family, our Maritime Self-Defense Force family, our own family, we took care of. And I would call that caring for family. Thank you all very much.
I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Rear Admiral Bob Guerrier, Director of Unmanned Systems for the U.S. Navy. Admiral Guerrier commanded the USS Ronald Reagan Carrier Strike Group, providing disaster response during Operation Tomodachi.
Thanks, Admiral Thomas. Good afternoon, Minister Izumi, Admiral Howard, Major General Onizuka, generals, admirals, and distinguished guests. This afternoon is an opportunity, I think, to reflect, to remember, to never forget the tragedy and loss of the great East Japan earthquake, but also to celebrate, and it's been said already, the incredible toughness, the resilience, the resourcefulness of the Japanese people. Tomodachi, friend, and also trusted partner, ally, teammate. These words mean something. They describe a relationship, well established, but also deepened through adversity and through shared experience, through learning quickly and growing together, stronger. Though this happened 5 years ago, and those that were part of it, it seems like yesterday, when we witnessed the incredible spectacle, most of us through international media, of an earthquake, a massive tsunami sweeping all in its path, a stricken nuclear power plant. By the numbers, Operation Tomodachi was impressive in every sense, and it played host to many firsts as well. The Japan Self-Defense Force undertook its largest disaster relief operation ever, more than 100,000 personnel supporting the operation. They established their first ever joint task force. The Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force readied every available asset, nearly 60 ships, including 20 destroyers and support ships. U.S. 7th Fleet operated in a direct support of the JMSDF. Shared information, we provided logistics support, delivered relief supplies to prioritize sites and locations that had been directed by JMSDF. We searched broad ocean areas, over 2,000 square miles along the coastline, conducted over 160 dedicated aerial reconnaissance flights. Seventh Fleet mobilized some 22 ships, 132 aircraft, more than 15,000 personnel, all in direct support of Japan's self-defense forces. And it was a privilege to do so. The names of ports such as Hachinoe, Miyako, Kesunuma became familiar as we worked to map debris and help return normal operations to those areas, again in close partnerships with our ally. Electrical utility crews and fuel were sent to isolated places such as the island of Oshima. Essex Amphibious Ready Group with 31st MEU embarked. That's some 2,200 Marines and sailors, along with USS Germantown, Harper's Ferry, played a huge role. USS Tortuga embarked some 300 Japan Ground Self-Defense Force personnel and 90 vehicles, delivering them from Tomakamai to Ominato. And that's a first, such an embarkation. 6 logistics ships were ultimately involved. As mentioned earlier, Reagan's strike group with the Chancellorsville and the Preble, and also the combat support ship Bridge. They were the first U.S. ships to arrive off the coast on 13 March, conducting SAR missions and delivering supplies with their embarked helicopters. But they were soon joined by a couple of cruisers, Cowpens and Shiloh, and destroyers Fitzgerald, Curtis Wilbur, Muston, McCampbell, John S. McCain. And those are familiar ships and familiar names from the Yokosuka waterfront, from the George Washington Strike Group. Symbols of our common interests and commitment, like all our forward deployed naval forces. These were some, but not all, of the units that were involved in this truly joint and combined operation. But the point is, we all came together swiftly, seamlessly, for a single purpose. On reflection, I think the significance of Tomodachi never ends. It lives on, it continues, and it builds. A reflection of these truest relationships, what it means to be a friend and an ally. It's a testimony of what we achieved together, and a most powerful message to all who watch our relationship, to understand its depth, its fundamental trust, its skill and expertise, its ability to adapt and prevail in the face of unexpected adversity. So I'm truly privileged to have had the opportunity to work side by side with our closest of friends in Japan in time of great need and great focused effort. By any measure, Operation Tomodachi was conducted in a contested environment, a radiologically contested environment, and we fought through it together. So I'm proud to have been a member of that winning Operation Tomodachi team, and prouder still that I'm still a part of it today. And we all are. And that's significant. And I think it's also most reassuring in a world that hosts many unexpected challenges, both natural and man-made. So, domo arigato, Tomodachi.
So please join me one last time in recognizing the Joint Japan Ground Self-Defense Force Central Band and the President's own United States Marine Corps Band as they play, as we mentioned before, Flowers Will Bloom. It's a song paying tribute to the victims of the earthquake and the resiliency of the people of the region. This song has been widely sung as a way to heal and remember the heroism demonstrated on this day.
き道に春風香る私は懐かしいあの街を思い出す叶えたい夢もあった変わりたい自分もいた今はただ懐かしいあの人を思い出す誰かの歌が聞こえる誰かを励ましてる誰かの笑顔が見える悲しみの向こう側に花は花は花を咲くいつか生まれる君に花は花は花を咲く私は何を残しただろう夜空の向こうの朝の気配に私は懐かしいあの日々を思い出す傷ついて傷つけて報われず泣いたりして今はただ愛しいあの人を思い出す誰かの想いが見える誰かと結ばれてる誰かの未来が見える悲しみの向こう側に花は花は花を咲くいつか生まれる君に花は花は花を咲く私は何を残しただろう花は花は花を咲くいつか生まれる君に花は花は花を咲く私は何を残しただろう花は花は花を咲くいつか生まれる君に花は花は花を咲くいつか恋する君のために
Phenomenal. Our final speaker is Colonel Craig Agena, U.S. Army retired. Colonel Agena was director of G5, U.S. Army of Japan, during Operation Tomodachi.
Thank you, sir. I have the privilege of being not only the last speaker, but the lowest ranking, and also the worst, with the worst ears. I also have an additional handicap in that everybody already mentioned the majority of the things that I wanted to present. If I could, sir, come out behind you.
But other than that, Colonel, you're looking good.
I guess what I can say is my only regret today is that General Kimazuka cannot be here together with us. He was diagnosed with cancer in November and passed away in December. We've known each other for 25 years. He's a great leader. All I can say is, we recently in the press we've read about talking heads and academians questioning the value of the alliance. We have 50,000 service member stations in Japan, more than anywhere else in the world outside the United States. But it's not just the numbers. It's in here and up here. And that's what came through during Operation Tomodachi. Back during Reagan administration, Prime Minister Nakasone said that Japan was alluded to the fact that Japan was an unsinkable aircraft carrier of significant strategic importance to the United States and Japan. As we confront the emerging challenges in the Pacific, that remains as relevant today as it was 30 years ago when Prime Minister Nakasone said it. Sir, with your permission, I'd like to say a few words in honor of General Kimazuka and our Japanese guests in Japanese, and General Kimazuka presented in English. 日本の皆様、僭越ながら、一言ご挨拶させていただきます。私のような平凡で地味な退役軍人を本日のような素晴らしい友達作戦記念イベントに招待していただき、心より感謝申し上げます。我々は友人であり、この友人が本当に助けを必要としていた5年前、東日本大震災の支援できたことは、この上にない幸せなことでした。地震、津波、そして原発事故という壮絶な災害と同時に、被災したことにもくじけることなく、ひたむきに助け合い、乗り越えようとする日本の友人を目の当たりにし、感動いたしました。また、多くの日本国民の期待に見事応え、組織力を発揮して、正々と捜索救援活動に励まれている自衛隊に敬意を表するとともに、微力ながらも共同で支援できたことは大変名誉であります。この連動の高さを国内外に示した自衛隊を心強く感じます。しかし、当時の災害派遣の人数関数まで、今、長い道のりが残されており、その途中で被災地における支援活動を終了し、本内領民に戻ることについては、広がりを聞かれる思いではあります。したがって、私は今後も何らかの形で日米同盟の発展に少しでも貢献させていただけるならば、これ以上の喜びはございません。大変お世話になり、ご挨拶に返させていただきます。Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Before we depart, I would like to, first of all, again thank the combined efforts of the Japanese Self-Defense Force Band and the President's own United States Marine Band. We now would like to present a graphic of Operation Tomodachi. This is the display that's going to be hanging in the Humanitarian Assistance and Disaster Relief Corridor in the Pentagon. So you see it should be up in both of these areas, and you'll see that up there as a permanent display in the passageway. With that, I would like everybody to rise for the departure of the official party. And for the rest of us, I would like one more round of applause for the world-class concert we had today. Thanks, everybody. Admiral Howard reminded me, get back to work.